The Sherlock Holmes Advent Calendar. An Odyssey to Jerusalem. By Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Nora Godwin. Narrated by Bryan Godwin. Part 17. The Settlers. It was already evening when we arrived in the settlement of Ashkenazi Jews. They lived in some simple single-story houses, which they had built themselves and which were surrounded by fields they used for modest agriculture. They also owned a few goats and sheep that were common property, as Salah explained to us. Their settlement, in which about 80 people lived, was organized in the form of a cooperative, so to speak. The community seemed to be quite religious, but they did not wear the significant clothing of the Orthodox Jews. As a spokesperson for the settlers, we were confronted by a 50-year-old man who introduced himself as Brother Benjamin, but was already known to Salah. Later, he told us that this man was originally from Prague and had practiced there as a doctor before discovering his piety, moving to Palestine and joining the settlers at the Sea of Galilee. He made his fortune available to the local community. "We don't want to keep you for long," Salah assured as we sat with Benjamin at a simple wooden table. "But a situation has arisen that has inevitably brought us here. You must have heard that there are certain riots in Jerusalem, triggered by some actions of an underground grouping." "We don't know anything about this," replied the settlers' spokesman. "We are trying to live a simple and godly life here. Jerusalem is far away and a completely different world. We are not interested in politics. We cultivate our fields, look after our animals, and educate our children. That's all that concerns us. I hope, of course, that everything will turn out well for the city. It is the home of Yahweh, and of peace after all. Nevertheless, I can't think of a reason why this riot would pertain to us." This was the moment when Holmes joined the conversation. "You are farming and raising livestock in your settlement, as I see. Do you also use the lake? After all, one can assume that you chose this place in the immediate vicinity of the shore for a reason." Benjamin nodded. "The lake also supplies our community," he confirmed. "We take our water from it for drinking and watering the fields. The reeds that grow on the edge are suitable for covering stables and barns." "But don't you catch fish in the lake?" asked Holmes. "To my knowledge, almost all fish are considered kosher, and I didn't see any boats on the shore." "We don't have any boats," Benjamin explained. "We are of the opinion that man belongs on solid ground. There he should work hard for his livelihood and that of the community. Fishing, on the other hand, is a possibility that does not correspond to our ideas of independent work and production. One of our principles is to be autonomous." "Does that mean," Holmes added, "that you don't trade with outsiders?" "You can't always avoid that," replied the settler. "We need, for example, tools that we can't make ourselves, but we want to keep these relationships limited. So, at least every now and then you send your brothers and sisters to shops," Holmes suspected. Benjamin smiled kindly and said, "Only the brothers. The sisters should never come into contact with non-Jews. But yes, sometimes we exchange our products for needed goods. We don't buy them because we don't use money anymore." "And all the brothers stick to that?" I interjected. "Of course," Benjamin was sure. "Those who cannot submit to the strict rules of the community must leave it." The last remark caught my friend's attention. "Does it happen often that someone leaves the settlement to live another life?" The former doctor shook his head. "No, only very rarely." "But it's only recently happened," Holmes suggested. "Two men who came from Germany have renounced themselves, haven't they?" Benjamin was surprised. How do you know that?" he stuttered. "Just a hunch," Holmes claimed. "They did not like it here?" "They were content," replied the settler, "but they wanted more. They went to Jerusalem to try their luck in the city. That was 3 months ago. We haven't had any contact since." Salah made a serious face. "I'm afraid the two of them got into trouble," he said. "Can you tell us their names?" When Benjamin hesitated, our Palestinian colleague added, "These are great difficulties. We can only help them if we find them." Then Brother Benjamin answered, "They are Brother Jacob and Brother Simon." "You don't have last names?" asked Salah. Benjamin raised his hands apologetically. "Last names don't matter to us," he explained. "We never asked them about it." I sighed demonstratively, whereupon the settler added, I am sorry that I can no longer help you, but that's all I can do. We thank you for your cooperation, Salah said, as he rose from his chair. This was also the sign of departure for Holmes and me. You want to go back to Jerusalem now? Said Benjamin, a little surprised. It's a long way. You'll be on the road all night. We are happy to offer you accommodation. You can stay here in the settlement and travel tomorrow. We can't offer you much convenience, but honest hospitality. Salah and Holmes briefly communicated with glances. While I apparently had no say, then the Palestinian replied, Thank you, Brother Benjamin. We are happy to accept this friendly offer. We were accommodated in the house of an initially silent young man named Aaron, who had agreed to provide us with a night camp. He was at most 20 years old, entertained us with a kind of lentil stew, and watched us closely during the meal. Finally, he took heart and spoke to us about the purpose of our presence. You are here because of Jacob and Simon, aren't you? He asked. That's right, Salah confirmed. We are looking for your former brothers. Worry crossed Aaron's face. Do they have problems? He said. Our Palestinian colleague did not want to reveal too much and therefore simply replied, They must have gotten involved with the wrong people. Of course, something like this brings the one or other problem. I understand, said the settler. You must know I was friends with them. Their fate touched me. You knew? Holmes surged. Can you tell us more about them? The young man hesitated only briefly, then the information just bubbled out of him. Jacob and Simon are brothers. I mean real brothers, biological siblings. Their surname is Geiger. They come from Wroclaw in Silesia. They worked in the metal goods factory. Why did they come here? Asked Holmes. For many it's the same reasons, Aaron continued. Bourgeois equality in the German Reich exists only on paper, especially for Jewish workers. In Germany, we are almost constantly confronted with hostilities and discrimination. Here, in this settlement, we seek a free and self-determined life in a community of equals close to God. But Jacob and Simon left, Holmes noted. Why? They came to the view, the settler reported, that our freedom is only a mirage that creates our isolation. In truth, even in the Holy Land, which God bequeathed to the Hebrews, we would not be free as long as the Ottomans ruled it. They have joined a Jewish Arab resistance group. A common organization of Jews and Arabs, I interjected skeptically. Aaron nodded. Yes, these people believe that we have a common enemy to fight. It's not about religion, it's about the occupied country. And how come? Holmes finally asked. That you know all these things, but Brother Benjamin doesn't. Brother Benjamin is a good leader of our community, Aaron replied. He keeps all the problems of the real world away from us by ignoring them. He doesn't want to know anything. This may work on a small scale, but for those who have contacts outside, there are contradictions. The information from outside also spreads amongst us. We discuss and evaluate. Only Brother Benjamin does not participate and ignores everything. For some, that's a problem. Also for you? Asked Holmes. The young man hesitated with an answer. Then he said, I see the great contradictions, but I am happy and satisfied here. This is the life that God has provided me, and I submit myself to it. I will get married soon and start a family. I'll stay here forever. I don't want to go back to Germany, nor will I go to the Zealots. The Zealots? I repeated without understanding. This is the name of the resistance group, the settler explained. The Zealotic Popular Front. Holmes gave Salah a questioning look, but he had to admit, never heard of it. In the documents of the Ottoman Secret Service, this name is never mentioned. We know nothing about a Popular Front of the Zealots. Zealotic Popular Front, Aaron immediately corrected, not Popular Front of the Zealots. All right then, Salah replied. But does it not change the fact that this group is not present? What does that even mean? Zealots. Sounds like a furry animal. The historical Zealots were a paramilitary resistance movement against the Roman occupation in Galilee and Judea, I explained. However, that was in the 1st century AD, or even during his lifetime. Judas Iscariot allegedly belonged to this group. In the year 70, the Zealots were significantly involved in the Jewish uprising. Their last representatives died in the fortress of Masada. And these are the people our perpetrators are referring to? Asked Salah. to suicidal persons and failed uprisings that led to the annihilation of the temple and the expulsion of the Jews from Palestine. They could have chosen a better name. Something like the Saladin Brigade would be more. Saladin was a Kurd, I objected, and the Kurds are among the most reliable auxiliary troops of the Ottomans. Who do you think is slaughtering the Armenians? No. With the Zealot Popular Front, a reference is made to a militant and unyielding spirit of resistance. However, these people could share the ultimate fate with their historical role models. In this respect, a name that refers to a more successful fight would probably be better. Knights Templar, perhaps? Scoffed Salah, who apparently still thought his proposal was unmatchable. Very strange, I attested, but I have something like the Holy War in mind. Holmes interrupted this nonsensical discussion. Gentlemen, he said firmly, it is probably not our task to discuss the name of the underground organization, but to prevent its activities. May I both politely remind you that attacks are taking place in Jerusalem and that an escalation of violence is imminent? Please, concentrate on our tasks again. Salah and I looked like deer in the headlights and nodded meekly. Holmes then turned to Aaron again. There's one question remaining, and this is the most important one. Where can we find the zealots? Unfortunately, the young settler had no answer. I don't know, he replied. The zealots are everywhere and nowhere. They're like ghosts.